let's play this forward because you bring up a really important point. So when you think about the doctor-patient relationship, we've always had this paternalistic approach to the patient. And I remember when we started Precision Medicine Initiative, Cancer Moonshot, all these things, people are like, never give that information to the patient. They're going to go get a double mastectomy tomorrow. And you're like, really? Now, are there people who are going to do radical things? Look, people took bleach because one president said so, right? To treat COVID. So like that, like the numbers in poison control went up. Like, so people are going to do some dumb things. But also, I think the question is, if we have technology that is so powerful, what is our responsibility? Is it to gatekeep it from people, or is it to open it up to allow people to have access to it? When as I've been going around the country doing office hours at college campuses and cities all around the country, and the thing I hear all the time on the left and on the right, it's the same, a lot of anti-AI sentiment. The one place where you kind of are like, look, I don't have access to, like, I'm going to wait 6 months to get to the doctor. I'm going to get 7 minutes. I'm not going to get, like, the frustration and the populist anger there actually has an avenue for a solution with technology done correctly. And so I think we have this moment where we say, look, you can't see one of us as a clinician. I'm not one, obviously, but you know what? What if we gave you at least access so that you could be in control of your destiny? That I think is something that we actually need to reckon with on a moral basis as a society and as technologists and as care providers. But like, I think this is the part that actually is there. The metric that we don't see right now is the social media influencer metric. There's already a ton of stuff that's happening. There's increasingly amount of people that are taking into their hands off-label or other ways or doing kind of their own stuff, GLP microdosing or other things through other areas. So we almost have this shadow healthcare market, and including the one that you start to hear about where people don't meet the criteria. It could be a GLP-1, it could be one of the new types of cardiovascular drugs or other type things. It could be hormone therapies. There's a whole range of these things where somebody says, look, I'm going to go on to this stuff prior to what the guidelines are, because if I don't, I will go on it, but I'll be way sicker when I do, and then I'll be covered for it. And so they're effectively doing it. And so you have that shadow side. Then you have another shadow side, which you might call well, that's clinically dubious. Go peptides, right? Like all this kind of lane and all that side. Then I think what we have to ask is like, what does good information look like from these models and those type of things? I think there's a bucket where my hope is done correctly. A lot more people will say, oh yeah, it's the right thing to do is to get vaccinated. The right thing to do is these things. And so we'll get this other layer of informed people being smart. That is my hope of what.
So I mean, I'm gonna take a swing here on this. Actually, I'm gonna say, first of all, the metric, I'm just gonna say a high level metric. I'm gonna say life expectancy. I think it's gonna go up. Now, I have two potential trends that I'm gonna argue for. One is, let's just assume, with all the caveats, that folks are accessing GPT with their healthcare. Okay, let's just say. Now, there may be some political landmines and things that we've done poorly in the past in terms of communication. Vaccination would certainly be in that bucket. But let's setting that aside. I think that the amount of curiosity and potentially the distrust or maybe lack of access, whatever the combination of factors are with the traditional healthcare system, have pushed people in a direction to potentially even be willing to pay out of pocket for a variety of healthcare needs. In fact, I've seen even arguments that were like, if I had just saved the money that I would have been paying to insurance, or I have this bill, and like, by the way, GPT showed me how to negotiate a cash payment, and it turned out to be shockingly low compared to list price. Like, this kind of stuff is like bubbling up in combination with the GLPs and some of the direct to consumer things that pharma is doing. Like, I just feel like there's a confluence of factors. I keep getting flabbergasted by the data coming out of the GLPs, not to over-index on it, but I do think
Yeah.
it's, people stop doing addictive behaviors. Their drinking is down. Like, it's just all these factors. I'm going to call the shot and say, does the AI become a part of a catalyst to people taking more ownership and potentially, I'm going to say the metric I'm going to look for is life expectancy. I
So
don't know.
that should
Like,
be the metric. I totally agree. That should be the metric. That like at the end of the day, what do we want as a metric? We want productivity, human productivity, happiness, and longevity. Like you nail those, and then like we're great as a society. I think the fact, though, of what we've seen is, look, life expectancy we still know is at a terrible spot right now, right? For like we have way too much self-harm. We have other type of issues still going on. We're still not out of a lot of the full U portion of this. Maternal death rates are still like way too high. There's like a bunch of dumb stuff that we still should solve. And I think we'd like if we're kind of like moving for needle movers. Here's what kind of scares me with some of this stuff is, and this is like really why I kind of say like I think there's an empowerment and like the portion of who you actually make your decisions with. When we were coming up with around a bunch of the strategies around COVID and like COVID vaccinations and what that was, part of the thesis was the old school public health model, which is decisions are made around the dining room table.
yeah.
They're made in the living room. They're a discussion for the family on how you're thinking about it. That turns out to be false.
Hmm.
Like, that was, with people like Vivek Murthy, others like a whole bunch of really, really good public health thinkers. But that turns out to be false. You know where it's done? In online forums. As you're
Mhm.
scrolling through Instagram, you're looking at what people say on Twitter, or X, whatever,
I
threads.
mean, a
Like,
solid meme will get me thinking for sure. I mean, I'm sort of half
no,
joking, but it's true, right?
it's
Like,
true, right?
but there's a
So
reason it's a meme.
Podcasts.
yeah, podcast maybe, right? No, but it's true because like
Super
people are like,
influential.
people
Yeah.
just kind of go, huh, what about this? And then it's like undermined. So the decision that what was fascinating from a sociological, psychological perspective is people are more willing to listen to their communities or the place where they got their online info, not even their news info per se, that way. So if you kind of carry that forward, what we're starting to see, both in some places good, some places more often than bad, is your interaction point and what you're listening to is an AI system. Look, you look at the numbers that have been released just by from OpenAI around some of the self-harm and other issues, and you just run the numbers. They say, like, look, across all queries, here's how much percent it is. And you just kind of look at the small number. You run those numbers and you get to 1.5 million people a week, each week, ideating on some kind of self-harm. 1.5 million people ideating with self-harm. That's very, very, like, that's stunning numbers. And so as more people interact with this in this ways, I think which kind of outcome we have is a lesson that we should take from social media is like we all thought social media was going to be used this way. And look, I'm one of the kind of key people who spent a lot of my career building those. And I go, how did people use it? How did people weaponize it? That's the thing. So I think one of the things that we need to do is ask ourselves really, what do we want to be true in a decade? A decade from now, what if we look at the bad things that could happen, what do we wish we had started today? What kind of policy, what kind of other things, what technology investments would we start today so that in that time period we're on a different trajectory? And that's not like shut everything down. That is not the answer because too much opportunity is there, but it's how do we shape the arc of that trajectory? That to me is the unique opportunity, like the moment that we have. Well, think about this, right? We have food deserts in the country where there's no grocery store or anything. We have healthcare deserts. We have health deserts. There is no access to care. You're going to drive 2, 4 hours. We hear these stories that are like we've all lived them too. Like I meet people all across the country who tell me these horror stories of what it takes to get care. In those places, they have nothing. Let's give them a regulatory sandbox that allows this technology to be used to get access to be more empowered for their care. Like, what does that look like? I think there needs to be a certification process, all those things. Those can be figured out. But give them access in that lower liability area with a chance that somebody actually has access to healthcare. But the trick in exchange of that regulatory sandbox is extreme transparency. You have to have
Yes.
extreme transparency and tethered closely with academia.
Yeah.
Tethered super closely with academia so that we learn, and we should fund that. We should fund that academic exercise as a national priority to figure out how do we solve this. And you backstop it by increasing the amount of healthcare teams that are in those areas, but that's going to take us a decade or 15 years to get there at least.